So number one, I think the thought of retirement is completely wrong. You could almost look at a way that if you were broke, you're selfish.
Yeah.
I said that on Peter McCormick's show on What Bitcoin Did, just because I knew that would set him off, right? So then the thing is like, well, how much Bitcoin do I need? And how much will it appreciate? It makes sense if you break it down, right? 2017, not that many people had known about it. And simultaneously, in a coordinated fashion in December, Google and Facebook banned all advertising about it. The banks and credit card companies blocked all transactions. Two things are happening. Number one, instead of $1,000 and $100,000 checks, we're seeing hundreds of millions and billion-dollar checks coming in.
And obviously, it's now going global. We've got these publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies in 20 different nations around the world.
Metaplanets in Japan, all over. You mentioned Sweden, one in France, the UK, Canada, and we're also doing really well. We've announced some big purchases of Bitcoin. You know, the stock's been trending up. I think it's up about a 3x. Yeah, they're popping up all over. And so, like I said, this is the new model. This is the new altcoin. It's important to understand this because that means bigger moves to the upside. But at the same time, I think we're going into the more asymmetric part of the cycle where there's more upside but less downside. What we're seeing is the makeup of buyers in the Bitcoin space has changed. This is where the institutional money is going. And so basically what you're doing is you're rolling the debt. Same thing the United States government does. So I take one loan, I pay off the old loan. The next year I take a new loan. I created a product that basically does all this for you. I believe we're going into the greatest era of prosperity the world's ever seen. But at the same time, as someone who studied every technology cycle for the last 300 years, every one of those cycles, every single time.
So you're about to listen to an interview that I recently conducted with Mark Moss, okay? The gentleman has built more than 8 businesses that have made more than $1 million in their first 12 months. I think it goes without saying, Mark's an expert in the space. He's got 700,000 odd subscribers on YouTube. And I think you guys are in for an absolute treat for this interview I've got for you. And again, I've been publishing more and more interviews recently. If you are like the 71% of people watching these videos who are not subscribed, you probably won't be notified when I drop my next interviews. So if you want to watch them, again, no shame on you if you don't want to, I can understand. But if you do want to watch them, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below so you will be notified when I drop those interviews. And with all that said, let's get straight into this deep dive that I recently had the pleasure of recording with Mark Moss. Okay, so everybody talks about retiring on Bitcoin, and this is going to be a pretty special interview because I'm sat next to the man who not only helped me somewhat retire, but you've probably helped thousands, if not millions of other people retire through all of the great content you create on YouTube. So firstly, thank you for all of that, Mark.
Yeah.
But you've also created some really interesting tools, these retirement tools that I really want to dive into with you today. But let's kind of start at a high level. Let's kind of start talking about the retirement problem and the retirement crisis that we both see is impacting millions of people around the world today.
Yeah. So we can talk about what people think retirement is, and we'll talk about what retirement really is. So I think, first of all, you said that I helped you retire, but you're here working.
It's true.
So what do you mean you're retired? So I think number one, there's a big misconception, and it's a big lie that's been sold to people. So people have been brainwashed, raised in an industrial era, taught an industrial era lens, using industrial era tools for a world that we're no longer in today. So in that industrial era, you worked on an assembly line for 40 years, and then you retired at 62, and you lived another 8 or 10, and you died. But we don't live in that world anymore. And I think most people still have this dream. They're on a pre-programmed track. They haven't stopped to think about, but there's this pre-programmed track that they're on of, well, I'm going to go to school, get good grades, save for retirement, and in 40 years I can quit and do nothing and live this life of leisure. And then I'll leave nothing to the world. Like, think about how big of a fiat mindset that is. So number one, I'm going to do nothing with my life. I'll have no productivity. I'll offer no value to the world. I mean, it's just the biggest consumer mindset there is. I'll offer no value to the world. I'm going to be just a complete consumer. I'm going to do nothing for 20 years. That's like a hell, if you ask me, right? Yeah. Having no sense of purpose and no activity. And then hopefully I'll die before my money runs out and I'll leave 0 to the world. So I think that's a fiat mindset. I think we should think about our lives as proof of work. What am I leaving? How am I making the world better? What have I done with my proof of work? And am I leaving a block that the next generation can build onto to build value, like a blockchain of life pushing value into the future? So number one, I think the thought of retirement is completely wrong. And so really it's not freedom from work. It's freedom to do work that I want to do. So I think number one, we reframe that. Number two, because the way that we think about it is I need to save up enough money, so that one day I can do nothing and sell my retirement savings and then die with nothing, even the idea of retirement with Bitcoin is wrong. So all the YouTube videos, all the conversations that you hear about how much Bitcoin do you need to retire are also off of that same faulty premise. Is it 6.15 Bitcoin? Is it 1 Bitcoin? Is it 0.6? That's all completely wrong because it's still based off of the same Dave Ramsey premise, which is save up money and then spend my money down to zero. So it's all built off the same faulty framework. So go ahead.
What's the better framework then? If that, and I do see those same problems. A lot of people are mischaracterizing and missing the bigger issue. What do you think is the solution there when we should be thinking about retirement?
So let me jump into one more topic before we come to that. So that entire framework is built off of a poor or middle class mentality. But the wealthy, the 1%, play a completely different game. You're playing checkers, they're playing chess. I hate to say that. They're playing the game of money, the game of wealth. So if I had a game, a board game of money, and I came over to your house, I'm like, hey, Luke, let's play this game. You're like, okay. You're like, how do we play? So you're going to want to find out the rules of the game, the objective of the game, what the mechanics of the game are, who the other players are of the game. If I brought you whatever, so you'd open up the instructions and you'd read through it. You would probably also think that if I've been playing the game for years and you've never played it, I might have a few tips and tricks and strategies that you don't know about. Right? Okay, so in the game of money, which by the way is not our highest pursuit in life, but in the game of money, the objective of the game is to earn fiat money and buy assets, not sell assets to buy money. One of the biggest mistakes, and it's really, again, a symptom of the fiat monetary system. My grandparents, my buddy's grandparents, they understood, because they were still in an equity-based system, a gold-based system, they understood that they were supposed to buy as many assets as they could. My grandfather, he would always talk about, I got to buy land, I got to buy land. And he owned all this land when he died. My good friend, his grandfather just died, and he's now sort of stepping in the role to sort of handle the business and the assets. And he has industrial buildings and houses and beach houses and mountain houses all over. But now my friend, he's the grandson, he's sort of administering the estate, but all the parents, what do they want to do? They want to divvy up the assets and sell them all off. They want the money.
Yes.
Right? That's the difference, right? So we don't want to sell assets for money. We earn the money and we buy the assets. So this takes us back to the entire game of money. So the poor and middle class, they make money. The entire way they view money, their relationship with money is, I make money to pay for my life. And then I need debt. I use debt to pay for things I can't afford. It's very important to understand this piece. The wealthy play a completely different game. They're making money to buy assets. And then the assets pay for their life. And the way they use debt is not to pay for things they can't afford. A lot of times you see people that are wealthy and you're like, why are they using credit? Can't they just pay for cash for that car or whatever it is? They use credit because it's cheaper to use someone else's money than their own. So if you played the game of Monopoly, which most people have played the game of Monopoly, it teaches you that. I go around the board, I collect money. I use the money to do what? Buy real estate. The real estate gives me income back, right? So that's the game. And so again, back to the whole retirement thing, it's based off of a premise that I'm supposed to sell assets for money, right? So what we want to do is earn money to buy assets, and we can do that with Bitcoin. So back to the retirement. So then the thing is well, how much Bitcoin do I need, and how much will it appreciate to the point at which I want to retire that I'll have enough to sell it off, right? So if I buy 1 Bitcoin and it's worth $1 million, then how long can I live on $1 million if I sell 100 grand a year or something, right?
Yep.
Where the whole premise is wrong. What we want to do, what the wealthy do, is we buy the assets, we buy the Bitcoin, and then instead of selling the asset, the Bitcoin, I can leverage the asset with debt to live off of. So now if I buy $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, in 5 years it's worth $1 million. I could borrow $100,000 off of that, and that's tax-free to me. I can live off that 100 grand. Now, most people, when they hear this, they go, yeah, but isn't that risky? What if I can't afford to pay the debt back? You see, but that's the wrong mentality.
Exactly.
That's because they're used to using credit to buy things they can't afford. The wealthy can afford it. There is no risk of that. They have $1 million in assets, right? And so it just highlights the thinking. So the proper question is, how much Bitcoin will I need? Well, here's the better question. How much income will I need to be financially free and go chase what I really want in life? Is it $5,579? Is it $11,269? Now, we want to know exactly what that number is because our brain works off of specificity. I need $11,269. Okay, great. Then the question is, how much total Bitcoin do I need at a 10% borrowing rate, 10% loan to value, 20% to achieve that $11,000 per month number? That's the better question.
And that's a really unique answer. And it's something that's lost in the Bitcoin space a lot. And I know it's something that you've thought a lot about because maybe a year ago, you pinged me a message on WhatsApp and you said, Luke, check this out. It's a little bit of a retirement tool that I created. And I was like, all right, I'll check this out.
Yep.
I opened this link that you sent me. It's like this 40-page PDF and it has a little retirement calculator in there. So again, I think firstly, I would love to know a little bit more of your thoughts surrounding that little retirement calculator that you built. And obviously the people can check out the links down below and use it themselves because it's a really valuable tool that even I've used myself. So let's talk more about that specific tool.
So the PDF you're talking about is I wrote like an ebook. It's about 8,000 or 10,000 words and it explains the game of money. So why we want to do it, why Bitcoin is unique for this, how it works, what are the risks, how do we mitigate against the risks, all of that's in the book. And you can download it for free down below. But the calculator basically tells us to put in how much income do we need per year. And then it answers how much Bitcoin will we need to achieve that number based off of whatever loan to value we think is safe. So for me, I like to be around 10% or less. But some people might want to be 40 or 50% because they don't have as much money. But basically it starts with how much money do I need? And then how much Bitcoin will I need? And then it shows you how you would do this each year, how you would basically roll the debt each year. Well, what about the payments? Well, what you do is you take a little bit of that money and you set it aside in an interest reserve account, and that makes the payments for you. So we've been doing that, like you said, I think it was maybe a year ago. I think we've had like over 10,000 downloads on that.
Wow.
It's still a little bit complex for people. So I recently launched a product called a perpetual income product where people can just say, here's how much income I need. We say, okay, here's how much Bitcoin you give us. And we'll just loan it against, and we'll just give you the tax-free income for life. And it's tax-free because debt isn't taxed. But that's how the calculator works. You know, if I had $1 million, if I borrowed 10% against that, it's $100,000. That's tax-free because it's debt. In some cases, it's even the payments are tax deductible because I'm paying interest on debt. And the goal is here, the big idea is if the asset is going up faster than the rate of the debt is growing, I can do it in perpetuity. Now, some people say, okay, Mark, I get that, but how do I pay off the debt? What happens in 10 years or 20 years? And my answer is, why would you pay off the debt? You're still not grasping this.
Exactly.
If I have an asset going up by 20%, right now it's going up by 50%. Let's say it's going up by 20%, but the debt's only 10%. Why would I want to sell the asset? So the goal is to, there's the whole frame around this is die with debt. So let's just say, I don't remember exactly, but if I had $1 million of Bitcoin, and I borrow 100,000 against it, in 10 years from now, I have, 50 million in Bitcoin, but I owe 5 million. And in 20 years, I have 100 million in Bitcoin, but I owe 10 million. Okay? So I owe 10 million against 100 million. Like, so what, right?
I do want to bring the conversation back to what the wealthy do. You made some really good points there about how they buy assets. Tell me more about that debt-free product you just mentioned, though, the more recent one that you've been involved in.
Yeah, so basically in the book, the free ebook and the free calculator shows you how to do it on your own. And it shows you how to calculate it. And so basically what you're doing is you're rolling the debt. The same thing the United States government does. Every year we raise the debt ceiling. Biden's on TV saying, hey, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we can't pay the debt. So it's the same thing. The debt never gets paid, and we just roll the debt every year, right? So I take one loan, I pay off the old loan. The next year I take a new loan, I do that. Like I said, I set a little bit aside for the payments, so you can do it on your own. But I created a product that basically does all this for you. I did it in partnership with Arch Lending. It's called Velocity. And basically, like I said, you just say how much tax-free income you want. We tell you how much Bitcoin we need. And we created a product, what I think is the best lending product in the world. The best lending product to me would be one that doesn't put my Bitcoin at risk. What happened with BlockFi, Celsius, et cetera, is that when you put your Bitcoin on those platforms, you lost ownership of it. Same with the money in the bank, right? The money in the bank is not your money, it's owed to you. And what happens is the legal distinction means that if they go bankrupt, like we saw with BlockFi and Celsius, that money is theirs in like a bankruptcy court. In this situation, the money is still owned by you. It's in an account that you own. a segregated account, and you can even have visibility to it, proof of reserves. On top of that, that account is insured. So even if something happens to it, there's insurance against that account. So to me, that's the best product out there. And then we'll take care of the back end where we'll make the payments for you. We'll just give you the tax-free income every year. We'll roll the debt, the whole thing. We're working on hopefully another 90 days, even having it where we can prevent against liquidation. So we're working on that as well. But anyway, so that's the product. Like I said, people can do it on their own. It's not that complex. There's a book and a calculator to do it on your own. Otherwise, yeah, there's a service for it.
I'm going to have to link that down below. Because again, I think it addresses the biggest problem in the world. Nobody can retire. Everybody is on this perpetual hamster wheel, struggling to retire, which again is why I was so excited to talk to you.
Let's talk about the numbers of this really quickly.
Let's do it, yeah.
So in America, well, the whole world has this sort of the developed world has this baby boomer generation. In the United States, half of the baby boomers that are retiring right now, half of them have no savings. Half. So that's how well the Save for Retirement's worked. Half of them have no savings. Of the half that do have savings, have an average of about $240,000.
And this is, sorry to jump in, but that's America. This is the richest, most wealthiest country in the world.
Yeah. Now, other countries do have a higher savings rate than America. But yes, it's a big problem. So the half that do have money have an average of $240,000. Now, per, Dave Ramsey and your financial advisor, they're going to tell you that what you can do is sell 4% of your stock position every year. And at 4%, it should last you. Okay, well, number one, 4% of 240,000 is like $800 a month. So even in El Salvador, I don't know how you can live on $800 a month, right? Number one. Number two, that doesn't really work all the time. So let's say that I was retiring in 2008 when the markets crashed, and it took 7 years to get back to all-time high. Or in 2000 where the markets crashed took 15 years to get back. So how well does it work in that environment, right? And so it doesn't really work. Number one, half doesn't have any money. Number two, like I said, the other half doesn't have enough. But let's compare this to Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin, if I had, true story, one of my buddies, he's an ex-pro surfer. He's about my age. He's starting to think about retirement. He's on the back half of his career. He's not really making much money. He's got about $300,000 in stock, in a stock account, equity account. That's not going to be enough money for him to retire. It's going to be whatever, $1,000 a month. So I sat him down. I showed him the calculator. If we took a third of that, $100,000, and moved that into Bitcoin right now, you get about one Bitcoin. In 5 years from now, that should be about $1 million, which would be enough to give you $100,000 a year in perpetuity. Your other option is you can pull about $1,000 a month or maybe $10,000 a year in perpetuity. Would you rather have 10,000 or 100,000? And only Bitcoin makes that possible. You can't retire on 10,000 a year, even in El Salvador. And so all of a sudden, it's making this accessible to everybody. That 50% that has an average of 260, they could retire.
So one Bitcoin could give you $100,000 of income a year in 5 years?
In 5 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That's based off of it growing to $1 million in 2030. Yep. I have a whole nother video we can link down below where I break down the math of what the government projects that the debt expansion, the monetary expansion will be through 2054 for the next 30 years. And if we extrapolate that money expansion into asset prices, I've broken down the math of where I think Bitcoin will be 2030, 2040, 2050.
So I just wanted to quickly interrupt this interview and remind you that if you don't hold your Bitcoin on one of these, you don't own the Bitcoin. What's the first rule of Bitcoin? Not your keys, not your cheese. So I just wanted to once again remind you, get your Bitcoin off an exchange. Don't trust BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. Put it into a hardware wallet. I've literally used all the hardware wallets in the Bitcoin space. I've got Bitvault here. I've got old school ledgers here that I picked up in 2017. I've got cold cards here. I've got hardware wallets coming out of the wazoo. I think they're all great options. Again, there's different strokes for different folks. If you want a Bitcoin only hardware wallet that has a fully open source code base, I really like Trezor's. They're even going to give you a discount if you use the link down below in the description. And if you like the touchscreen hardware wallets, I recommend you check out what Ledger's got. They've got Ledger Stacks here that have a really cool little touchscreen. You can get a Ledger Flex that also has a really cool little touchscreen. This is the Stacks. This is the Flex. I think they're both really cool. This one kind of looks like a phone with its fancy little phone case here. Again, you guys are going to get $10 of free Bitcoin if you grab a Ledger with the link down below in the description. And again, what do I always tell you about hardware wallets and storing your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words on paper? We never want to do that. We want to put it onto something that is going to last for generations.
Good. Gave it
Oh, that was easy.
Again, Bitcoin's generational wealth, but only if you protect it on something that will last for generations. And that's why I love the titanium plates that you can get from Stampseed. They're going to give you a 15% discount on anything you want to buy from Stampseed if you use the promo code Luke15. And with all that said, let's get back into the interview. Now that we've got our Bitcoin actually protected the way it should be.
And all that math goes into the calculator. So you can understand the math, you can adjust the numbers as you see fit. But based off of that math, which I think honestly is pretty conservative, I think the government is going to way overshoot their debt projections. But yeah, that's where it'd be.
And I do want to come back to some 2030 and 2050 projections for the price of Bitcoin in a minute. But I don't want to close that loop of talking about what everyone gets wrong with money. And I think you said something really interesting. The wealthy people, they buy assets, but they also start businesses. Most people, I hope, would know, but you're a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. So I first want to ask you, again, how many businesses have you started? And give us the elevator pitch on your business career, so to say, because you're not just a YouTuber.
Yeah.
You've done a lot more in the real world too.
Well, I mean, currently I own 3 businesses that are like 3 8-figure businesses. I'm an equity partner in 3 other businesses worth over $500 million, and partner in a venture fund. So a lot of businesses today. As far as how many I've started, 8 or 10 businesses that have hit 7 figures or more. I've had 2 high value exits, both in the tech industry. So a high tech medical equipment company. I had an e-commerce company. So yeah, a bunch of different businesses and a bunch of different niches. I look at the lines between business and investing as very, very similar. Warren Buffett talks about how he never buys stocks, he buys businesses. They just happen to be public. So whether I'm investing into a business, my business, a friend's business, or a public business, I kind of look at it the same way. I have some money, I got, 300 grand or 500 grand. Should I hire a new business development manager in my business that could maybe bring me back 300 grand in revenue? Or should I go buy Tesla stock? And do I think Elon Musk can do a better job with my money, right? So I would look at it sort of the same way. But when it comes to investing, what I try to tell people is that you don't invest your way to wealth. You have to create the wealth in the business first, and then you invest the money. So a lot of people have this backwards as well, and I'm sure you see this all the time. They want to start trading Bitcoin or start trading crypto or whatever to like live off of. But I just try to remind them, like, Warren Buffett is like maybe the most famous investor of history, at least of our current time, but he didn't build his wealth investing. He created a company called Berkshire Hathaway that he went to work at every day. And Ray Dalio, largest hedge fund manager in the world, didn't make his money from investing. He started a business called Bridgewater Capital, right? So even those people who you look at as investors are actually business owners. So we need to make the wealth, create the wealth first by providing value, solving problems, and then we can invest that money.
This is another big problem with the educational system that you always call out in nearly every single one of your videos. So what's the catch line you say in your introductions?
Everything you've learned about money is wrong.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
And it's true, because everybody tells you don't start a business. They tell us that's too risky to start a business. And the same thing with the retirement. The narrative around that's completely wrong.
Yeah. Like as if investing is safer, right? I was 2 weeks ago. I was with my attorney, and his daughter's also an attorney, and she's not like really a Bitcoiner. And she was like, the thing is, I just think it's just still too risky. And I said, okay, do you own any stocks? And she said, yeah. I said, do you own any like of the Mag 7, like Apple or Nvidia or Tesla, whatever? She said, yeah. I said, so you own some Nvidia? She's like, I own a little bit of it. I'm like, what do you know about microprocessors? What do you know about the growth trajectory of microprocessors? Do you know how to design them? Do you know where the supplies come from? What about when DeepSeek just shows that they need 1/10 of the GPUs that they thought they needed? Like, how risky is that? You know nothing about that business. So like, we have all this inherent risk, and most people think for some reason it's safe just because it's more mainstream. I would say, sort of back to the business thing, the opposite, right? So a lot of times people think that like getting a job is less risky. The problem with that I've seen is that now I've learned one skill. I've gotten really good at this job, this customer service job, this administrative job, this design job, whatever. But those employers can just lay you off whenever. But now I only know this one skill applicable to that one employer. So then where do I go in the market? Versus if I start my own business and I have all these different skill sets that I've learned along the way, I can always figure out a way to deploy those into the market.
And this gets back to the question I wanted to ask you. If you were talking to someone who's 20 and wanted advice on what to do, what would you tell them?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is number one, you have to understand value creation. So I often say that people have a hard time understanding Bitcoin because they don't understand money, which seems weird. Eric Case and I saw him put on X the other day. People don't understand, or forget trying to orange pill everybody. He said, you won't be able to orange pill everybody because most people don't understand money and they don't understand value creation. So value creation is, how does money even get made? And when my daughter's in high school, so I talk to a lot of boys in this age range, and I try to explain this topic to them. Why would you ever give someone money? The only reason you ever give someone money is if they solve a problem. That's it. I want a burger at McDonald's. This person will take my order. I'll give them money, right? So if you can understand that mechanism, which seems pretty basic, then you would say, well, okay, so if I provide value, I make money. Well, then if I can provide more value, I make more money. Well, how do I provide more value? Well, I need to go learn a new skill. So I think just understanding that mechanism. I don't make money by getting a job and having someone pay me. The reason they pay me is because I solved the problem. If I want to make more money, I don't pick it and demand my union to pay me more for doing the same job. I learn new skills and I climb the ladder. And the same is true through businesses. If I have a window washing business, I make a little bit of money because I service this home. If I have a business that designs personal computers for the whole world or creates Amazon, I make more money. That's number one. Number two, I think that the internet's changed everything and has allowed us to now take our skills that we've learned and then deliver them to the world, permissionless economy. And that was sort of my path even. But what I would say is, if I look back on my own career, sometimes I think, like, if I would have interned for like a big like investment bank or interned for like a big hedge fund for even 3 years or something, how much more could I have learned and how much could I have shaved off my own learning curve? And I think in today's internet culture, there's a lot of sort of mainstream information saying that people should start their business and create an agency and be a contractor and work for all these people and build something really big. But I think there's a big benefit from going and learning first. And so for me, before I started my first business, I worked for a company for 7 years and I learned all about the industry and went and started the business to do that. So I think there's something to be said about maybe testing your skills, learning your skills inside of an environment first, maybe into your 20s, mid 20s, and then going and launching a business from there.
I love what you said there about learning more skills. I think you've actually had some really spicy takes in some videos over the years. And you said, like, look, your income that you earn is directly proportional to the kind of
Yeah.
problems that you actually solve.
Yeah.
If you're making no money, you're not solving any problems.
Yeah. I went as far as to say, you could almost look at a way that if you were broke, you're selfish.
Yeah.
I said that on Peter McCormick's show on What Bitcoin Did, just because I knew that would set him off, right?
But it makes sense. Break it down.
It makes sense if you break it down.
Yeah.
Right? So what I was saying is that if you understand that value creation is by solving a problem. So if you're like, hey, I'm moving, and I'm like, hey, I got a truck. I'll come over on Saturday and help you move all day. Like, you'd be like, dude, Mark, that was amazing. Thank you so much. You helped me move all day. You used your own truck. If you ever need anything, let me know. Right? So reciprocity. I did you a favor. You owe me a favor. Cool. Let's say that the next weekend I went and helped another buddy. And he's like, dude, I'll help you anytime you need help. So now I've helped 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and they're all willing to now give me a favor back, right? Because I've helped them, they're willing to help me. But let's say that I don't need your favor, but I might need a favor for him. So let's say that you gave me a ticket, like an IOU. So you're like, hey, Mark, here's an IOU. When my kids were young, they'd say, Dad, I'll do this thing for you. So you give me an IOU, I could use that. So now I could say, well, I don't need a favor from you, Luke, but what I'll do is I'll take this IOU and I'll give it to this guy. And he's going to do this thing for me, but he'll come claim it from you now later, right? It's sort of like what money is. So when I solve a problem, someone gives me $1. That $1 is an IOU where I can go get someone else's labor now, right? So we get money by providing value. The value is paid back through a favor, but because we're not in a barter market, the money is the medium of exchange, so it's like an IOU. And so what I was saying in that example, so if you understand that mechanism, then you could almost say that the more dollars I have means the more value I've provided to the world. And if you understand that, then you would say, so that means if I don't have any money, I haven't provided much value to the world. And you could almost say that person is selfish. And I know people don't like that, but here's what I mean by that. If I'm just at McDonald's taking an order, I haven't learned new skills. I haven't taken the time to take education courses, watch YouTube videos, work on these skills and provide those to the world. I am wanting the world to give me more things, but I'm not willing to fix any problems in the world. So the person who studies and studies and studies to cure cancer or nuclear fission or whatever, they're spending all that time to provide more benefit to the world. And so that's selfless, right? But if I'm just like watching Netflix all day, going to McDonald's in the morning and wanting the world to give me more money, that's selfish.
And the problem with not all Western culture, but again, a prevalent narrative in Western culture is, hey, you should just be entitled. You should be able to sit on your couch, watch Netflix, and
Yeah.
earn a six-figure income, which is the biggest problem. But again, back to like solutions, which is what you always talk about. We have the internet at our hands today.
Yeah.
Yes, the educational system is built on this industrial era, mindset where they're training people to solve low value problems,
Right.
which again inherently only gives them low value income. And then they're wondering, hey, what's the problem? I did what I was told was right. I went to university for 3 to 5 years, but I'm only getting this low income.
Yeah.
People aren't correlating the fact that the skill they learned is not a valuable skill.
Right, because they haven't correlated the fact of the value thing. And that goes back to even what we talked about in the beginning was the retirement thing. So people have this dream of one day doing nothing and living this life of leisure and being able to spend that money, as opposed to like, how can I, the goal is like, how can I be free of this job so I can go do a higher value job? So you'll notice people that make a lot of money, billionaires, they turn to philanthropy. They want to go help people, right? So it's not like I want to do nothing. It's like, how can I not do this so I can do something higher? So I think that's the big thing. And of course, we're here on a Bitcoin show talking about money creation. The other thing is that in order to grow that wealth, so we can be more free to do other things, we have to understand, again, the game of money. And in the game of money, the number one penalty, so it's sort of like game Monopoly, when you go around the board, you can go to jail or something, right? And the big penalties in the game of wealth are, number one, taxes, and number two, inflation. So taxes are the biggest drain of our wealth, potentially taking half of the money that we make, working half the year just to pay the government. So if I really want to grow my wealth faster, I should keep more of what I earn. Now, the tax code is written in a way to benefit creators and punish consumers. So if I create wealth, I'm a business owner or I'm an investor, I get favorable tax treatment. If I'm a consumer, W-2 employee, give them my money, I'll go watch Netflix, the tax code punishes you. So what I want to do, remember we talked about earning money to buying assets. I want to earn the money and put it into assets, but I don't want to pay tax on that money. So I need the assets to give me now tax depreciation that allows me to write off my income. So now instead of, let's say I made $1 million in California at the top tax bracket on $1 million income, half of that goes to taxes. I have 500,000 left. Now I can buy 500,000 in Bitcoin. But if I took that $1 million and bought $1 million worth of real estate for, say, 200,000, I could now write off the million and keep 800 grand. Now I get $800,000 of Bitcoin instead of 5, and I have $1 million piece of real estate at the same time. So it's like we need to be a creator. We need to be providing value, not just to be so we're not selfish, but also if we're trying to build wealth, we need to make more money by providing value. Plus, the tax code benefits the creators.
It's a beautiful point you make. You said building wealth. I think this is potentially a good pivot to talk about a thesis that you've been talking about for years. Now, again, the first time I heard it, I thought, no, Mark, I don't know what you're talking about with this one.
Okay.
But you said in the next bull run, this was way back in maybe 2021 or 2022 from memory. You said in the next bull run, I don't think there'll be such a big altcoin cycle.
I said no cycle.
You said no cycle.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that, because I think right now, at the time of this recording, I think we're kind of seeing the manifestation of what you predicted happening. We're seeing this massive frenzy in the Bitcoin treasury companies.
Yeah.
28 Bitcoin treasury companies created in the past 30 days.
Yeah.
It's going parabolic.
Yeah.
So I want to talk more about your thesis, because that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, so in 2022, I made a couple videos. It was right after FTX fell. And I made a couple videos saying that there is no alt season coming. There will be no altcoin boom. I said Bitcoin will take off again, but altcoins won't. Now, to be clear on this, when I used to write a cryptocurrency newsletter 2016, 2017, 2018. Back then, 2017, there was 2,500 altcoins. Today on CoinMarketCap, there's like 16 million. Altcoin season is generally known as when the top 150 tokens move up in dominance against Bitcoin. All right. So certainly out of 16 million tokens, certainly there's going to be a couple that will move up faster than Bitcoin at certain times, certainly. But alt season is collectively known as that. The top 150 are moving up in dominance against Bitcoin. Let's get the definitions right. So what I was saying is the days of where you just close your eyes, buy a basket of altcoins, and they go up more than Bitcoin. I said those days were over. I gave a lot of reasons why, regulatory changes, all these things. But the biggest reason why is because technology cycles happen about every 50 years, and there's 4 distinct phases of them. And phase 1 is this retail eruption phase. So Bitcoin was invented. And quickly we have this speculative mania where we're trying all these other variations of Bitcoin. And retail is coming in with their money, and this was the altcoin explosion. In 1908, we had the explosion of oil fuels, automobiles, mass production. The automobile was created. Within 3 years, there was 250 manufacturers, and they all went out of business. 3 remained, Ford, GM, GE. And so the same thing was here. We had all this explosion of altcoins. Which one's going to beat Bitcoin? And that was part of that first cycle, the retail mania of that cycle. In phase 2, which we're in right now, is the institutional or the sovereign phase, the frenzy phase, as we call it. And the frenzy phase is where now real institutional players are coming in and putting money in. And the reason that's changed is that now we have institutional allocators looking to deploy billions of dollars, not thousands in these degen meme tokens or DeFi tokens. They're looking to deploy billions. And you can't put $1 billion into Shiba Inu or whatever. You can't do it. There's no market cap for that, number one. Number two, as a professional allocator whose job is on the line and maybe even legally, I can't put money into an anonymous coin with a white paper that can get rug pulled. Like, I can't do that. I can only put money into a big enough market that is SEC registered, right? And so this is what's changed this market cycle. The other thing is that the altcoins gave a leveraged way to play Bitcoin. So in alt season, first Bitcoin goes up, supposedly, and then all the money from Bitcoin finds its way to altcoins. That's what happened in the first cycle. And the reason why that happened is because in the early days of 2017, 2018, you couldn't buy altcoins directly with dollars. You had to buy Bitcoin first, and then I had to trade the Bitcoin for the altcoins. But today, on Coinbase or whatever, Gemini, you can just buy altcoins directly with dollars. So still people think that Bitcoin goes first, and then the money goes from Bitcoin to altcoins. And they're like, well, Bitcoin's going up. It's got to go to altcoins next, right? No, because people buy them directly. But also what happened is people were using the altcoins as more volatility or hopefully to try to beat Bitcoin. But today, that more volatility beating Bitcoin is the Bitcoin treasury plays. So now we have companies that are basically leveraging up their balance sheet, tapping into the public debt and equity markets to increase the equity valuation, and that's pulling in all the money. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, they're tapping public debt and equity markets. The public debt markets are about $300 trillion. Not retail with their $100,000 checks, $300 trillion sitting there. The appetite is enormous. As you said, we've seen more than 20 just in the last couple of weeks. We have 72 of them that control more than 3.5% of the supply. And some of these 6 or 8 companies that I'm tracking are up 500, 700%, 1,000% in just the last 6 weeks alone. Like the blockchain group was up 2,000% in the last 6 months.
So 20x.
20x. So these are the crypto returns that people were hoping to get over there. It's the same thing. It's the same game. It's always the same game. It's just the names and the people change. And so now it's the same game, but now it's on publicly traded companies with big money, with real institutional money. Now, how much money is there? Well, we can see that Circle, which is USDC, it's the second largest stablecoin that's out there. They have about 25% of the market. They just did an IPO. They were 25% oversubscribed. My fund, the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, we couldn't even get an allocation to it. And it's up, I think, 300 to 500% in the last week since IPO. We have all these treasury companies that are getting in. We had Nakamoto, David Bailey's company. Nakamoto went public. They raised $700 million in 5 days. We had Vivek Ramaswamy launch his asset, which I think raised $1 billion in 48 hours. We're talking serious. We're talking billions of dollars. And what this is really showing us, if we zoom out, is it's showing us that this enormous amount of money is waiting to get into Bitcoin, but it needs a public way to get into it, and that's what's happening.
And obviously, it's now going global. We've got these publicly traded Bitcoin treasury companies in 20 different nations around the world.
Yeah.
We were talking about one in Sweden recently
Yeah.
that launched. Everybody's talking about Metaplanet over there in Japan. Well,
Yep.
and Metaplanet was one of the first movers. But you guys with Matador,
Yep.
Canadian publicly traded treasury company,
Yep.
you guys launched in the same month as Metaplanet. So again, I've been telling
Not the same month. So Metaplanet, I think, launched in April of 2024. Metaplanet, we started raising money for private, I think, in July. I think we went public in December of 2024.
Okay.
So about 6 months later.
Yep.
But yeah, so Matador, it's a publicly listed company on the TSX, Toronto Stock Exchange. So sort of like a jurisdictional play, like Metaplanet's in Japan, Matador's in Canada. And we're also doing really well. We've announced some big purchases of Bitcoin. You know, the stock's been trending up. I think it's up about a 3x, 300%, you know, in the last couple of months. And the jurisdictional plays are popping up all over. You mentioned Sweden. There's a big one in France, the blockchain group. You got this new one that just popped up in the UK. Yeah, they're popping up all over. And so, like I said, this is the new model. This is the new altcoin. This is where the institutional money is going.
And what I think is really interesting, I've been seeing a lot of the Bitcoin going onto these treasury balance sheets. It's kind of a little bit like Hotel California. The Bitcoin's checking in,
Yeah.
but a lot of the Bitcoin, 90+% of those companies that put Bitcoin in the balance sheet, they don't end up selling.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier. There was it, did you say 70 or 80 different entities control something like 3 million Bitcoin?
I was saying 72 companies control more than 3.5% of the supply.
There you go.
But I think it's a really important point that you bring up, where what we're seeing is the makeup of buyers in the Bitcoin space has changed. And it's important to understand this because Bitcoin has notoriously had this 4-year cycle, these very volatile moves up and down, 80% drawdowns on the down. But understanding the makeup of the buyers is important to understand where the future goes. So for example, if we break it down into like a first principles level, markets stop going up when there's no more buyers. And markets stop going down when there's no more sellers, very simply. So like, for example, in 2017, Bitcoin ran from $1,000 to $20,000 in 1 year. And as it was going, because humans are only motivated by pain and pleasure, when Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 3,000 to 5,000 to 8,000, people were getting rich. So it was sucking more people, that pleasure, 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 pleasure. At the top, you start kind of running out of people. 2017, not that many people had known about it. And simultaneously, in a coordinated fashion in December, Google and Facebook banned all advertising about it. The banks and credit card companies blocked all transactions. And so all of a sudden, there was no new buyers to hear about it or to get in, and then the market crashed. And then all those people that had got in at the top, buy, pushing it parabolic to the top. Then as soon as it turned over, they started sell, and it rapidly went back down. We call them weak hands, like lettuce hands, right? So they buy at the top, they sell at the bottom. Now what's happened is we've changed the makeup in the buyer. So we went from this very retail-oriented buyer, which is sad in my opinion. You can see it you can see it through the data, how we've gone from retail hands and now into these strong institutional hands. And to your point that you made, it sort of goes into this like deep, dark, cold storage, right? These treasury companies are not going to sell, supposedly.
So just wanted to once again interrupt this interview and just remind you, if you're thinking about selling your Bitcoin, don't do that. There's a better solution. It's called borrowing against your Bitcoin. I think Firefish is the best place to borrow against your Bitcoin because they don't take custody of your Bitcoin. They're a completely open source peer-to-peer lending alternative, and they're going to give you 30% off if you use a promo code Luke. So I think you'd be completely silly to sell your Bitcoin and pay the taxes. Again, not financial advice, but I think borrowing against your Bitcoin is a great alternative to paying the tax man. Check out Firefish, link down below. And with that said, let's get back into this interview.
And I think it's important to understand that two things are happening. Number one, instead of $1,000 and $100,000 checks, we're seeing hundreds of millions and billion-dollar checks coming in. So that means bigger moves to the upside. But at the same time, I think we're going into the more asymmetric part of the cycle where there's more upside but less downside. Because remember, markets move up when more people are buying. So we have big billion-dollar checks coming in. But they also stop going down when there's no more sellers. So what we'll see is that the selling to the downside could be muted because of the makeup in buyers have changed. And it fits with these 50-year cycles that I track. And then you have an S curve. So in the S curve, basically from the time it takes to go from 0 to 10%, it's the same time it would take to go from 10 to 90%. So the S moves up in like a parabolic move and then it flattens off. So I believe we're going into that parabolic part of the move right now, which is perfectly in line with what I'm talking about, where we have this asymmetric trend where we could potentially have these big upside moves and a muted to the downside move.
I think a lot of people expecting, diminishing returns. I think that is the thing they're not considering. They're not looking at Bitcoin as this bigger, broader revolution that is being adopted by the mainstream. And I don't think these people talking about, diminishing returns. I mean, sure, we could see them this cycle, who knows? But I'm thinking like over the long run, I expect we're not going to see diminishing returns. And that's because of the buyer has changed.
Right.
We now have a new entity dominating the market, and it's these big guys writing $100 million, $1 billion checks
Yeah.
to get into Bitcoin. And they're also not, you made another really good point, they're not just smash buying the buy button on Coinbase like a lot of retail used to. They're methodically, slowly waiting for 2, 5, 10% dips to just average in. So like I agree, I think we are going to see smaller moves on the downside moving forward.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the 4-year cycle is still intact until it's proven otherwise.
That's right.
No asset has ever moved up or down in a straight line. So even on the way up, there's still dips along the way, or even down, right? There's dips. But I think it's possible we'll see that. Also, we have to keep in mind that as the asset gets bigger, the volatility goes down. So when you're a $500 billion asset, the volatility it's easy to move that asset. When you're a $2 trillion asset, $1 billion checks don't move that. So I think there's the other side of that as well. But I think at the end of the day, the global liquidity cycle is more in the driver's seat as to what happens, not just the 4-year halving cycle. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I do think we maybe have this asymmetric move to the upside. One thing about the cycle, going back just for a minute, so we have the 50-year cycle and we have the 4 phases. In the first phase, there's a lot of growth. What happens in every cycle, people think they missed it. I missed out on Bitcoin. It's too late. It's too expensive. If we go back to the last cycle when it started in 1971, was Intel came out with the microprocessor. In the first phase, in the first decade, Intel went up by about 26,000%. People thought, oh man, I missed out on that. I never catch these. Why didn't I buy it? They sat on the sidelines and it went up. The second phase went up another 28,000%.
It's insane.
Then the microprocessor gave birth to the computers. Then we have Apple. Apple went up 57,000% in the first phase. Oh my gosh, I missed out on it. I never get into these things. And then it went up like 1.5 million%. And Microsoft, I think, went up 1.5 million% in the first phase and went up another 57,000 in the second phase. And the reason why I bring that up real quickly to go back to where we're at now is so many people think they missed Bitcoin. And they think that I missed it, it's too late, I need to go find this alternative. Without realizing that the second part of the move is actually, one, where the most growth is, but number two, where there's least risk. When Apple had already gone up 57,000% or Intel had gone up 26,000%, it was de-risked. If you look at the internet days, buying companies in the late 90s was very risky. Most of them never made it. But buying Apple after they came out with the iPhone or Facebook or whatever, after it already made the success, was a lot safer. And so I'd say the same with Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin, most of the risk is already gone from Bitcoin. But the governments are going to make it illegal. I think that's out the window now, right? The US government's buying it. So I think most of the risk is gone, but we still have that big move in front of us. Now, going back to the cycles, what were you asking about?
I want your bigger read on the cycles. You talk about these economic cycles,
right.
political cycles, revolutionary cycles, and I think you have a really interesting big picture framework.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is I started talking about 5 years ago about 3 cycles converging. One was a 250-year political cycle, an 80-year financial cycle, and a 50-year technological cycle. And what was interesting when I started talking about this about 5 years ago, I was talking about how we were going to be reaching like peak centralization from the political side and how the world would start breaking apart. And back then everyone thought I was crazy because it was like we were going into like peak World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, everyone's going to lock us back down, global, passport IDs, all these things. And so we were still at like this peak centralization. But I said, well, this is, what the data shows. And here we are now on the other side of that 5 years later. Klaus Schwab's out. World Economic Forum's done. Trump sort of put an end to the World Health Organization, all of that. China and Russia are breaking apart, doing their thing. The Middle East is breaking apart. And we can see the world is actually decentralizing now. And so it's pretty interesting that sort of, I'd kind of started talking about this pre that, and here we are. But I think what's important to understand with that is that that political cycle where the world is now decentralizing fits into the 50-year technological revolution cycle and the 80-year. So what does that mean? So about every 80 years, the financial cycle resets. And so about 80 years ago was the Bretton Woods Agreement. And that was basically the whole world coming together to come up with a new monetary system for the world, right? The dollar would be the reserve currency of the world, backed by gold. The currencies of the world pegged to the dollar. And here we are now in 2025, and we had the IMF calling for Bretton Woods 2. We have the BRICS nations trying to start their own currency. We have China and the BIS setting up like this Project Enbridge, like CBD system. And so we can see this sort of the world is like trying to figure out what the next monetary system is right now, sort of right on cue with that. So we have the world breaking apart politically. On a financial side, central banks are net sellers of U.S. Treasuries, which has been the dominant asset for the last 80 years. They're buying more gold than any time in history. We have sovereign banks buying Bitcoin. They're buying oil. They're buying lithium in the ground. They're trying to figure out what that reserve asset is going to be next. We have nations starting to compete over which currency is going to be it. China's trying to break the gold market, with the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And so we're seeing all of this happening at the same time as the technology cycle is giving us Bitcoin. And so it's like sort of when the world's breaking apart from the dollar homogeny, the financial system's falling apart, treasuries are no longer the reserve asset. You're trying to figure out what's next. Technology is giving us the asset. And so it's a very interesting way to look at it, I think, in my opinion. And like I said, 5 years ago, it was like that would never happen. And today it's looking almost like inevitable.
The time is nearly, like you said, inevitable. It's
Yeah.
nearly perfect timing. That's what I think is so fascinating. Now, I think you read a lot.
Yeah.
Some people think I read a lot. My girlfriend reads more than me.
Really?
But
Good
we
job.
don't read anywhere near as much as you do. Probably combined, sadly. Now,
I've read a lot.
You
I've read a
have.
lot, yeah.
You have. I remember being in your little YouTube studio way back in maybe 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
One day you bring in this big box. I'm thinking, what's Mark carrying? I was sitting there in the corner typing away, and you just dropped this big box in your office, and it was full of books.
Yeah.
Full, like 50 to 100 of them.
Yeah.
So obviously you're pretty well read. I want to know, what are your top 5 favorite books? Not only your favorite, but then maybe, some books that you recommend other people read that are really useful for this particular moment in time that we're living in 2025.
I would say, if I went back to the beginning, like probably the 2 most influential books on me, and I know this is like super cliche and everybody probably says the same thing, but Rich Dad Poor Dad and How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the reason I would go to those 2 books is because they were the ones that like shifted my mind to good credit and bad credit and understanding the difference of how people think about money, assets, and debt. So like a lot of what we talked about with the debt stuff and the wealth stuff, that's like Robert Kiyosaki stuff. And then How to Win Friends and Influence People is really about how to act in the world, how to have influence in the world. And the reason why I would say that is because most people, again, everything you've learned is wrong. Most people are spending a lot of time trying to make money without realizing that money is a byproduct. Money is a byproduct of the relationships and the skills that I have. So it's always people that I know that bring me ideas, and because I have the skills to fulfill them, I make money. I got invited to go into a deal with Matador. That was my relationship, but because I have the skills of Bitcoin and marketing and branding that they want, it makes me a lot of money.
It's multifaceted.
Right. And so Win Friends and Influence People is about the relationship side of thing. Rich Dad Poor Dad is more about the wealth side of things. So I'd start with those 2 things. You said what books are instrumental for sort of like where we're at today. One of my favorite books I think of is like When Money Dies. And it really documents sort of like what happened in hyperinflation in Weimar Republic. And I love that book because it sort of documented what people were living through in that era. And it documented sort of this hyperinflation. I'm not saying we're going to hyperinflation, but this high inflation environment where over 9 years you saw the German mark lose value to gold. And it looks like if you looked at the chart of 9 years, you just bought here, held there, you would have gotten super rich. But when you overlay the volatility, you can see this is exactly what we're living in today. Oh my gosh, I'm rich. Oh my gosh, I'm broke. I'm rich, I'm broke, I'm rich, I'm broke. I might as well just sell. And I think that's super important. Let's see, what else? I think, the Bitcoin Standard, that's like a no-brainer. Lynn Alden's recent book, Broken Money, is also really good. Those are probably the ones around like money and finance. Unfortunately, the financial system, like the macroeconomic environment is so big and it's so fast moving. I don't think there's a lot of good like investing books. For the investing, I think it's like follow along, play by play. I subscribe to a bunch of financial newsletters who give me like analysis on a regular basis, and I kind of see that. I see how it's playing out in real time. I think that's a little bit better for that.
You write one as well. What's yours?
Yeah, I write one called the Quantum Wave Investment Report. And we're basically following this quantum wave cycle, how we're in the second phase right now, and what's happening specifically right now around Bitcoin treasury companies. So we're looking at like how this fits into the 50-year cycle and which of these companies are the best based off of a whole new set of metrics, right? So a big problem that people have right now is they're still trying to understand these companies in the old frame. So like, what's their EBITDA? And what's their PE ratio and their, these types of things. What's the return on employees or whatever? And these new companies have all these new sets of metrics. And so, like, for example, they're going after like their main metric probably is like BPS, like Bitcoin per share. So ultimately, they're trying to get more Bitcoin for per share of equity. There's like MNAV, which is like the market cap divided by the Bitcoin that they have. And there's like the days to cover, like how many days will they need to be at the rate they're adding Bitcoin, at the yield, the Bitcoin yield, at the current rate, how long will it take them to cover the MNAV that they have? There's torque. So like for each new dollar of debt they add, how much does that add to their market cap? So there's all these new sets of metrics. And so if you don't understand these new metrics, you can't understand why one company is 6.8 times and one like MicroStrategy is a 2 times, for example.
You know my favorite metric?
Which one?
You know Peter Dunworth over at the Bitcoin Advisors.
Yeah.
Their main metric, it's BUM, Bitcoin under management.
Okay.
That's one of my favorites. It's a good one. That is a little bit easy to remember that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Bitcoin under management. Yeah. So I think you need to understand all these different metrics. And so, we talk about these things in the newsletter. We sort of have our own marketplace or dashboard, I should say. And sort of like back when I used to write the crypto newsletter, it's like every month a deep dive into the research and it's a curation of information.
It's what people need because there's so much noise out
Yeah.
there. And it's the curation,
Yeah.
delivering it in a signal-packed,
Yeah.
short, concise manner. I think that's what the world kind of needs because this kind of maybe pivots us to one of the last topics I want to hit on you, AI. I think AI is maybe, again, I think it's a double-edged sword. Most technologies are. It creates a lot of noise and, people just proliferating all sorts of different information and content out there. But I think some people are using AI very strategically in their business.
Yeah.
So I want to pick your brains about AI. How much do you use it?
Yeah.
And where do you see that trend going?
Yeah. I use it all the time. All the time. My wife's always like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm like, "Oh, my friend AI, right?" It is a double-edged sword. All technology is, because what happens is technology makes us stronger using the technology, but weaker without it. So I used to carry big, heavy bricks, and now I put them in a wheelbarrow, and I can move more bricks faster. I'm more efficient. That's what technology does; makes us more efficient. But I'm not as strong as I was. Or in the gym, I wear wrist straps so I can carry heavier weights, but my grip strength is not as strong, right? So it's like they make some things stronger, some things weaker. With AI, I'm able to think so much better, connect dots I couldn't think of before, brainstorm ideas so much better, but then at the same time, I'm like weaker without it. So I would say we're using it for everything. Now, I think a lot of people probably use it completely wrong. And what I mean by that is that most people that I talk to, they're trying to use it either number one for very low level tasks. Before we go to that, I'd say most people are using it to try to do things for them. Write this email for me. Write me an article on Bitcoin or whatever, right? And I think that's the wrong thing. I think I'm above average on prompt writing, and I haven't been able to get it to create anything good for me. I think where we really want to use it is as a thinking partner. So I was showing you before we came on how I use ChatGPT and the reasoning model, and how I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this? What am I missing? What are the pros and cons of this? How would you compare that idea to this idea? What do you think about this buyer persona? How would I want to position this? So I'm using it as like a thinking partner. So it's like the human is still in the driver's seat of the creative side, but using it to like connect the dots and think through things, look things up. I've been put into like deep research mode. So for example, back to the treasury companies, as I was flying in after 31 hours of flight, I'm tired. And as I was waiting in line in customs, I was on Perplexity and I had it in deep research mode. And I was like, open up a smart web company, run me through the origin. Where did they come from? When did they incorporate? How much money did they raise? And like, I gave it this whole parameters, and it gave me back this whole summarized deep research on that, right? So I'm using it as like a research assistant, a brainstorming partner. I'm using it to like be the smartest person in the world for me, but not to tell me what to do. And that's the big difference.
And that's where I think a lot of people are going wrong.
Yeah.
They're using it just to write the emails and just create them the video, and it's just a proliferation of subpar average content. I think very few people are using it the way it should be used.
Yeah. But even back to the writing, so I have a coaching program, and in that I have an AI strategic leader module. And I'm teaching people how to use AI in a strategic leadership role. And I have all these questions of people coming in, but how do I get it to do my emails? And I'm like, stop it with the emails. Hire an assistant for $7 an hour to do the friggin' emails, man. Like, we're trying to figure out how to double your business in 12 months, right? So I have all these prompts on like, how could, here's my business, here's the context, here's what we've tried. How can I double my business? What areas could I systematize or automate? How could I, right? And like strategic questions where I could double or triple my profits. Pay someone $7 to do your emails. Like, you know what I mean? So I think even that, right? What happens is we have the shiny object syndrome where we have this new tool and we want to go, what could we do with this thing? And we're trying, oh, I could try it for this, I could try it for this. But like, do you need to do those things? It's more like, what am I trying to do? What is my single biggest constraint? What is my big domino I need to knock down? What's the problem I need to solve to do that? And how can I use this tool to help me achieve that and forget about everything else? I think back to the AI thing for a minute, I believe we're going into the greatest era of prosperity the world's ever seen. But at the same time, AI is going to be very disruptive. So, as someone who studied every technology cycle for the last 300 years, every one of those cycles, every single time, people were afraid it was going to take away all the jobs. The Luddites burned the power loom because it was going to take away the tapestries, right? Like the electricity put the candle makers out of business, and automobiles put the buggy makers out of, like, every technology. It's called creative destruction. It does destroy an old way, but it creates a new one. So every single cycle, people have been afraid it was going to take away all the jobs, and it does, but it creates new jobs. So I believe that there's more prosperity on the other side. I believe it's an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. What happens is people think about the pie being this big, and let's say this is the pie of the economy, and there's 5 billion people working in this economy, but now 3 billion are going to get laid off because of AI. There's only 2 billion working. But I think that's wrong. I think the pie gets this much bigger. As a business owner, I'm not going to fire my workers. I'm going to have my workers do more. Why would I want to fire my workers? Why wouldn't I just grow my business by 20%?
Train them to use the AI.
Right. Now, there's going to be a lot of people displaced. In the industrial era, 1778, we had the first mechanized machines. They could do the work of 5,000 men. Well, there's 5,000 men out of work now, and that sucks. So I think it's going to be very disruptive in the short term. In the longer term, I think there's more abundance coming from that. But what I would say is that we can't save everybody. We can save ourselves. And so everybody has the chance to jump on AI right now and start saving in Bitcoin. We can all take ourselves out of the monetary system and we can start saving in Bitcoin right now today. We can all start using AI and start making more money today. And I think for those that grasp onto these two tools, the next 5 years is going to create more wealth and value in your life than you could ever imagine. And if you don't, you're going to fall further behind than most people can imagine. And you might say, Mark, that's insensitive but what about these people? Certainly, like, we're here trying to help everybody. But right now you can help yourself, and you should definitely be jumping onto AI and Bitcoin as fast as you can.
That's the big thing. You just need to obviously see the tools. Yes, the tools are going to change things, but you need to be strategic with what you do, what tools you jump onto. And again, I think going back to a point you talked about earlier in the interview, if you're in your 20s, go learn from the best. Go work in one of these businesses. And again, I don't know if the people know this or not, but I was lucky enough to learn from you for 2 years.
Yeah,
so
that was awesome.
not only thank you for those 2 years, Mark, but thank you for your time today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
So if you enjoyed my full interview with Mark, you're probably going to love the recent interview I did with George Bodine. I'm going to put a link to that interview somewhere around there. And with that said, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you thought about it down below in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one.